everyone, welcome to Molly's Flower Shop, my new baking show. Thank you so much for joining me in the kitchen today. It's November, and what I've been doing the last few episodes is I've been highlighting some sort of a fruit or produce, something seasonal that we can really celebrate every month. So November, pretty easy to guess. I'm going to go with the classic pumpkin, but I am going to change it up a little bit. We're not going to do anything like a classic pumpkin pie or anything like that. We're going to change it up with my mile-high pumpkin no-bake cheesecake. And I want to give you just a little bit of background about why I'm doing this particular recipe. So my husband and I just got back from a European vacation, and when we were in Paris, we had the most amazing cheesecake there. And we don't speak a lot of French. On the menu, it was just called cheesecake à la moment, which means cheesecake of the moment. There weren't any ingredients on the menu, so we just ordered it, and it was fabulous. We kind of tried to figure out what was in it, and we came up with kind of like a caramel pistachio, I think, cheesecake with a ginger base. So I've tried to recreate that, and I think I've gotten pretty close. So I took that recipe and I flipped it into something that's a little more ready for autumn. So that's what we're going to do today with this pumpkin cheesecake. So the really special thing about this cheesecake is it's a no-bake. A lot of times with cheesecakes, you would start with a cream cheese and egg base. You'd do it in a water bath in the oven. We're not going to do that today. We're going to do all kind of cream ingredients, and we're just going to set it in the fridge for a few hours to get it all set up. And usually cheesecake recipes have a graham cracker base, and we're not going to do that today either. We're going to start with our Gingersnap base. So this is a little bit different. So we have ginger snaps instead of graham crackers. So if you can kind of think about a graham cracker cookie and a ginger snap cookie, really texturally they're pretty similar. So the idea is all the same. So what I have in here is 14 ounces of ground up, and I just used my food processor, 14 ounces of dry ginger snap cookies. I just bought them from the store, pre-made. Any old ginger snap will do. I've done this with 3 different store-bought brands, and they all work the same way. So we've got kind of like a sand texture. Just puree it for maybe about 30 seconds to make sure they all get broken down. And then the next thing I do is I add 6 ounces of melted butter. That's a stick and a half of butter. So I'm just going to pour this butter right into the ginger snaps, and then I'm going to run over and just put that through the food processor just for a few seconds to get it all blended, and then we'll go ahead and start building our cheesecake. And I also want to mention this is a super easy recipe, and it's really relatively quick to throw together. So you could do this the day before Thanksgiving, or if you have any holiday celebrations coming up, you can do this the day before, stick it in the fridge, and it'll be ready for tomorrow. Let me go throw this on the old food processor really quick, and I'll be right back. So I just pulsed this in the food processor for maybe 30 seconds. I just wanted to incorporate that butter with those ground ginger snaps, so it came together really quickly. So I'd like to now kind of walk you through how to form this base. And it's quite simple. However, you do need a little bit of specialty equipment for this. You will need a springform pan. Springform pans, they're pretty easy to find. If you don't have one, you can find one in pretty much any grocery store or home goods store. You can also find these at secondhand stores. I get a lot of my stuff at secondhand stores. I probably got this for a couple bucks at one of my local secondhand stores. But they're unique because they have a latch, and when you expand the latch, the pan opens up and you can kind of lift it off of the base here. So if you have anything that you don't want to have to lift out of the pan after it's finished, springform works best. So we'll put the crust in the bottom, which I've lined with parchment paper. It just kind of helps it unstick a little bit. So I've just done a layer of parchment and cut off the excess underneath. And then I'm just going to dump in my ginger snap base. I'm going to cover the whole bottom, and then I'm going to build it up the sides just a little bit too. And that's your choice. If you just want a crust on the bottom, this would be a little bit thick for just a bottom crust. So I'd encourage you to kind of bring it up the sides. It's really easy. Let me show you how to do it. So we're just going to pour it all in. And it's just already cooked ginger snaps and a little melted butter. Okay, a lot of melted butter. So you don't have to worry about baking it because there's nothing here. There's nothing raw like eggs or anything like that that you have to worry about cooking down. Ooh, I'm losing water here. And I need a little measuring cup to kind of show you this trick. So give me 1 second. Let me grab that. Okay, so I'm back with my ginger snap base here. And what I'm going to do is kind of spread it around. And it's sort of hard to do with a spatula. So I do a little trick with just a flat-bottomed measuring cup. Any old measuring cup will do. And I just kind of smash everything down to compact it. And I'm going to do the same thing up the sides. This doesn't have to be perfect. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. You just want some of it to crawl up the sides. I say eventually it ends up being about 1/4 inch thick probably. So I just kind of smush it up the sides, pack it down in the base. If it's a little bit thicker in one spot over the other, it's not the end of the world. But it comes together pretty easily, especially when you use a flat-bottomed measuring cup like this. It really packs down pretty easily. We're just about there. I'm just going to reinforce my sides. Now I'm going to chill this, and that butter hardens right back up. So it seems kind of delicate and crumbly right now, but once it gets cold again, it all kind of settles, and you don't have to worry about it being kind of crumbly and loose the way it is. I kind of smush down the sides so I get kind of a sharp edge, but if they're a little crumbly as they kind of crawl up the edges, that's perfectly fine too. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So here's kind of what the end result looks like, just a packed down ginger snap base, and I let it come up the sides. I didn't take it all the way up to the top. It's kind of fun when you take it out of the spring form pan and your cheesecake mixture actually kind of extends over the side of the crust. So from the side, you can kind of see the crust and the cheesecake. So we'll be able to take a look at this when this is all chilled and ready to go. So right now I'm actually going to tuck this in the freezer, and we're going to leave that in there until we need it again, until the cheesecake filling is ready. And I've also just grabbed 2 cups of chilled heavy whipping cream from the fridge. So I'll just explain what the components of this cheesecake are right now. It's going to be 2 cups of whipped cream. So we're going to make a whipped cream first, and then we're going to set that to the side. We're going to take cream cheese, which is a very basic staple ingredient of pretty much any cheesecake. We're going to take that cream cheese and beat that in the bowl as well. Then we're going to add some mascarpone cheese to it, and that's an Italian cream cheese. It's a very, very light kind of pre-whipped cream cheese. So we're going to add that to the bowl, and then we're going to add our special seasonal ingredient, which is pureed pumpkin. Now, you can make your own pureed pumpkin by baking pumpkins and then scraping out the inside, cooling it. You can use it that way. I just like to use canned pumpkin. I think canned pumpkin is a great ingredient, especially if you can buy organic. It's a few cents more, but any old pureed pumpkin will do. So we'll use that. And then we'll mix that all those ingredients together with some powdered sugar and pumpkin pie spice, and that kind of takes it up into the dessert realm. And then once we have that chilled for just a few hours or overnight if you have the time, we're also going to caramelize some pecans, and that'll be our little garnish for the top. So first of all, I'm going to make my whipped cream, and I've done whipped cream on the show before. This is a very basic one. 2 cups of cold heavy whipping cream and 2 teaspoons. I'm smiling because my dogs are in the bedroom, and I can hear the little one smelling against the door because she wants to come out here and get some snacks. So that's why I'm smiling right now. 2 cups of cold heavy whipping cream and 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. Let me move my bowl off the wall here. Come here, you. All right, I'll bring this up, and it's with the whip attachment you want to use for this. This will be beaten on high for probably 4 minutes or so. All right, so I have had my heavy cream beating on high for probably about 4 minutes or so. So as you can see, it's thickened up, but it's still really nice and light. So what I'm gonna do is scrape this into a bowl and set it to the side. The nice thing about this recipe, I think you'll notice this about me, is I can use the same bowl. I don't have to wash anything in between because we're working with really similar ingredients. Everything's cream-based and it's all going to end up in the same cheesecake. So it's okay if the bowl isn't like 100% clean. I'm not worried about it. Okay, there's that. So I'm going to snap my bowl right back on. Loud. And then I'm going to use my paddle attachment. And you can do all of this with a hand mixer. You don't have to have one of these stand mixers. You can do a hand mixer. Just make sure, I would recommend using your whisk attachment for the whipped cream, and then I would switch to your regular attachments for the rest of this process. So I have 8 ounces of just regular full-fat cream cheese. I do like to use full-fat dairy when I bake. I think the product just turns out a little bit better. Fewer additives, less water, less sugar that's added. It's just a little bit more of a true product. So I like to use whole fat. So regular old cream cheese, this is 16 ounces, so 2 regular blocks of cream cheese, and it's been on the counter for a few hours, so it's nice and soft and room temperature. That's important. If you try to, ooh, I almost spilled it right on top of me here. If you try to work with cold cream cheese out of the fridge, you're going to end up with, it kind of separates and it gets lumpy and it just doesn't incorporate with everything. So do be sure to take your cream cheese out early if you want it nice and smooth and whipped together. And then cream cheese is a little bit thick, so I'm actually going to let this beat just for a minute or two so it thins out a little before we add our mascarpone. Okay, so I just whipped the cream cheese just for a minute or two, and then in between each of these steps, I would recommend taking a spatula and kind of scraping the bowl, because sometimes this cream cheese is going to get kind of stuck to the side, so I just kind of scrape it, put it right back on the paddle. And then next is going to be my mascarpone cheese. If you haven't ever used this ingredient, don't be afraid of it. It's delicious. It's a little too delicious because I kind of want to put it on everything and I have to restrain myself. So this is about 8 ounces of mascarpone. And as you can see, it's kind of like pre-whipped. It's like whipped cream and cream cheese had a baby. That's kind of what this product is. It's amazing. It's not sweet though. It's kind of the flavor of cream cheese, but it's the texture of kind of like thick whipped cream. It's amazing. You're going to love it if you use it. It's in the dairy aisle. It comes in like a little tub. So find it and use it because it is so good. And it's Italian. The Italians, they know what they're doing with food. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there. Just the same as I did before. I'm just going to whip it for a couple minutes here. All right, so I just whipped my cream cheese and mascarpone together. It's one nice even consistency. I'm going to scrape the side again like I said. Come on. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to add my pumpkin. Get off of there. So pureed pumpkin in the baking aisle, especially this time of year, you can find it all over the place and it's super cheap. I think they've got to be less than $1 a can. They're not very expensive, especially this time of year. You can probably get 2 for $1. I like organic. If you don't want to go for organic, that's perfectly fine. Any old pureed pumpkin will do. Just make sure you don't buy the pumpkin pie filling. Sometimes there's cans of pumpkin pie filling, and they're right next to each other. So if you're kind of wondering why I would put a vegetable into a dessert, pumpkin, takes on sweet flavors really well. You see it in pumpkin pie, but it's baked. You don't have to worry about using pumpkin puree in a no-bake recipe because it's already been cooked before it's in the can. So don't worry about that it's raw or anything like that. It has been pre-cooked. So it's very good. And believe me, I've tested this recipe several times by eating several pieces of cheesecake, and nothing bad ever happened to me. So I'm going to put this in here, 8 ounces or so. So usually cans are about 15, 16 ounces, about a half a can pureed pumpkin. You could probably do a little more to taste if you want, but it is a little wet, so it might thin out your cheese mixture if you do a little more. I think 8 ounces turns out really well. Mix that around a little bit. Okay, so just another minute around the bowl. I've incorporated my pumpkin and my cheese mixture, and I'm going to scrape the side again just to get it all off here. And I'll show you the texture. This is what we're working with when it's all blended together. So you can see it's not that strong orange pumpkin color anymore. It's kind of lightened up a little bit, and it's extremely light to the touch. So we're already kind of in that really soft, airy, whipped stage. And the only thing we have left to do in the bowl here is to add our powdered sugar mixture. So let me just make sure this is all unstuck. Perfect. Okay. And then the last thing I'm going to do is add in powdered sugar. And this is pumpkin pie spice. So the powdered sugar has been sifted. And the reason I sifted it is because powdered sugar actually has cornstarch in it, which a lot of people may not know. That's what gives it kind of its binding property. So cornstarch is really, really kind of sticky to the touch. And a lot of times when you take powdered sugar straight out of the bag, it's already kind of clumped together. And it just may not kind of evenly break down in the bowl. So I always like to sift it a little bit just to make sure it's nice and light and aerated, no big clumps stuck together, and then I can make sure that it's all going to incorporate really well in the bowl. And then since this is dry, the only other dry ingredient I have, I just added it right to the same bowl. This is a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice. If you don't have pumpkin pie spice in the pantry, don't worry about it. You can substitute cinnamon, nutmeg, ground ginger if you have it, ground clove, just a little ground clove, not too much. Pumpkin pie spice is a majority of cinnamon and nutmeg. So if you don't have the actual pre-made spice in your pantry, you can always substitute. I find that there's almost always something else you can throw in there and make it taste good. And you can do this to taste too. I really like the flavor of pumpkin pie, so I did a nice tablespoon of it. If you want to back off and do a teaspoon, maybe taste and see if you want a little bit more, you can do it that way as well. So I'm going to throw this in here, maybe, without making a total mess, which I have. It's been sitting in the bowl for a few minutes here, so it got stuck to the bottom. Oh well. That's what kitchens are for. It's for making a mess. I will never have a clean kitchen. I've just come to accept it. Plus, when you have 2 dogs and a cat and a husband running around, oh well. Okay, so I made a little bit of a mess. I'm just going to wipe my powdered sugar kind of into the bowl. I'll clean that up in a second. And so now we're going to raise the bowl back up and mix for another few minutes to make sure all that sugar is incorporated. And it's going to kind of fluff up a little bit now with the incorporation of the powdered sugar. We're almost done with our filling. All right, so I have incorporated my powdered sugar and my pumpkin pie spice in with the rest of my mixture. So again, that was 16 ounces of cream cheese, 8 ounces of mascarpone cheese, 8 ounces of pureed pumpkin, a cup of powdered sugar, and a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice. And again, that's up to you. This is kind of what the mixture is going to look like. Pretty nice. And you can also, if you like to, because this is kind of a one texture dessert, because it's all kind of that soft, light, airy, whipped texture, other than the crust and those caramelized pecans we're going to put on top. I just think you need a little crunch to sort of relieve yourself from all of this lightness. So if you'd like to, this is a good opportunity. You can mix in some extra pecans if you want. I would do like a 1/4 cup, or I've done little bits of toffee. In the baking aisle, you can find bags of toffee. This is a good one. You can just throw some toffee in there too, because then when you take a bite, you get those little pieces of crunch kind of throughout. So your choice. I'm not going to do it today, but that's the thing I love about baking, is you can experiment, kind of make it your own. So I'm done with the mixer. I still have yet, I'm covered in whipped cream. I still have yet to add that whipped cream. And the reason that I'm going to do it in the bowl by hand is because we spent all that time whipping all of that air into the heavy cream. And if I throw it in the bowl and spin it out, I could lose a lot of this nice airy fluffiness that I worked so hard, well, that my mixer worked so hard to get in there. So I'm actually just going to do it by hand. It only takes a minute. So I just dumped it right in there. And then ever so gently, I'm just going to, this is called folding. So it's kind of around the bowl and down the middle. And just very slowly bring everything together. I made the mistake one time of chilling the whipped cream after I'd made it, and then went to incorporate it in with everything that was room temperature in the bowl, and the coldness of the cream didn't want to incorporate nicely with the rest of my ingredients. So usually you would always want to keep your whipped cream cold. This time you'll want to leave it on the counter while you're working with the rest of your ingredients. Just a little extra tip there. And another note, you can be mixing and mixing, and if you still see some white streaks from the whipped cream, don't worry about that, because everything's going to set up really nice and one texture when you put it in that springform pan. It's going to be in the fridge for 4 hours anyway. So if it isn't 100% incorporated, it's okay, because when you bite into it, if you see little streaks of that whipped cream, no one's going to complain about that. And if they do, they don't deserve to eat your cream cheese cheesecake anyway. Okay, so I like the look of this. So what I'm going to do now is grab that Gingersnap base that we made before. And just in those few minutes, it's firmed up really solid. So it's not that kind of delicate crumbly texture that we had before. And so we're really, I mean, this is a very indelicate process. We're just going to dump it all in here. Every time I make this, I get super nervous. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way it's going to fit. There's no way. I'll show you what I mean. It's not even all in there. But I start kind of freaking out. I'm like, how is this all going to fit in here? But it does every time. I don't know how. It's like a Mary Poppins purse. It has like a false bottom. And it just keeps going and going and going. That's empty. I can't believe it every time. Blows my mind. So I'm just using a spatula to smooth out the top. If you have an offset spatula, that's those ones that kind of have a little angle at the bottom, you can use that, and then you can kind of hover over the top and get a nice smooth top, but I'm just not that picky. I'm going to sprinkle this with caramelized pecans anyway, so I'm not so worried about a perfectly smooth top. And there we go. And here's your finished product for now. So this is what it looks like when it's all put together, and you're going to put this in the fridge, not the freezer this time, but the fridge for 4 to 5 hours or overnight if you can. If you're going to leave it overnight, I would put a layer of cling film on the top, just in case anything falls or whatever happens in the fridge, nothing kind of gets into the cheesecake. So let me put that in there, and then I'm going to show you how to make the quickest caramelized pecans ever. It takes 4 minutes, I promise. My cheesecake is chilling in the fridge, and so I'm going to make my caramelized pecans Super simple. You can do this with any chopped nuts that you like. You could even do whole ones if you wanted to. I just think chop is a little bit easier to kind of sprinkle on top. So I have a cup of chopped pecans. You could do walnuts, almonds, really anything you'd like. So a cup of pecans here. I have a 1/3 cup of just regular brown sugar, to which I'm going to add just a tablespoon of water. We're going to bring the sugar and water mixture up to a very, very low kind of a bubble in a saucepan on my stove. And then we're going to dump these guys in. It's like 4 minutes and then they're done. All you have to do is let them dry while your cheesecake is chilling and you have caramelized pecans. Okay, so I've just added a tablespoon of water to my sugar, and let's go over the stove and get these done. And you want to use a non-stick pan for this as well. Okay, so we've got bubbling sugar, so I'm going to put that 1 cup of chopped pecans in, and you'll see the pecans kind of it almost seems like they absorb the sugar. But they become very evenly coated here. And I'm just going to cook these in this saucepan for 3 to 4 minutes, just until I can kind of smell the fragrance of the cooking pecans. You have to be careful though, because sugar burns so quickly on the stove. So you don't want to let it go too long. You don't want to walk away or start doing anything else. Just stay here until they're done. Almost there. Okay, that is going to do it. Just been on there for about 3 minutes or so, nice and caramelized. So I'm going to go ahead and walk these over. I've got a silicone cookie sheet here. It's like a no-stick reusable cookie sheet. You could just do this with regular parchment paper on a cookie sheet. Spread them out a little bit, and then you're just going to let them air dry for a couple hours. That looks good. And that's as easy as chopped pecans are. It was just 1 cup of chopped pecans. Any nut will do. A 1/3 cup of brown sugar and a little bit of water. And these ones I did last night. So you can even hear kind of how dry they are, and they've got that nice caramelized texture on top. And now all we have to do is bring that prepared cheesecake out and sprinkle these over the top and enjoy. So here we have it. This is my mile-high, no-bake pumpkin cheesecake. Now remember, we started with that ginger snap and butter base, and that's where you can kind of see the edges have raised up. It's hard as a rock, so it's going to keep everything nice and inside. And then all that cheese filling in the side, on the inside, it's that homemade whipped cream, cream cheese, mascarpone cheese, pureed pumpkin pie spice, and a little bit of sugar to sweeten it up. Remember, you can add a little bit of mixed nuts in there if you wanted to for a little crunch factor. You could do a little bit of toffee, chocolate chips. You can kind of go crazy with this one, but I left it basic for today. And then we had that really simple caramelized pecan. All I've done is just let those dry overnight, and now they're this beautiful crumbly texture. So I'm just going to take a few of these and sprinkle them over the top. There is no right or wrong way to do this. It's just sprinkle. And then you could take like a caramel sauce and drizzle that over the top. A lot of times you would see, pumpkin pie and all that served with whipped cream on the top. This kind of throws everything into one big dessert. I think that looks pretty good, and I hope you do too. Thanks for joining me in the kitchen today for this episode of Molly's Flower Shop. I'm so excited that you've chosen to join me, and I hope you come back next month for another seasonal, probably holiday-inspired episode. Remember, I'm on Facebook at Molly's Flower Shop. You can follow me on Instagram, Molly's Flower Shop. I'm online at mollysflowershop.com, and you can always check me out on JATV, that's Charter Channel 994, or on my website too. Thanks again for joining me. We'll see you next time, and remember, life's short, eat the cookie.